Jean brought George back to the Lawrence family's manor. Alexander arrived home first. Instead of going back to his room, he sat down in the living hall. Jennifer, Jasmine, and Joshua were there too. Jasmine's eyes were red and puffy as if she had just cried a river. Jean ignored everyone and wanted to go upstairs with George. "Hold up," Alexander bellowed. He was so loud that it felt like even the manor trembled. Jean turned around calmly as if she was not startled at all. She asked, "Yes." Alexander was furious. "Do you have any idea what you did earlier? Have you not learned your lesson? Many years have passed but you still never change. You're still reckless. Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Jean stared straight into Alexander's eyes. Alexander bolted up and walked toward his daughter. He lifted his hand into the air and wanted to slap Jean on the face. Nervous, George tightened his grip on his mother's hand. Jean barely reacted as she said, "Slap me and the wedding with the Locke family is over." Alexander's hand froze in midair because he was threatened by Jean's words. He had been in the business world for many years and not many things or people were able to provoke him, let alone threats. He glared at Jean and he saw the look on her face, unwilling to back down. With gnashing teeth, Alexander put his hand down and said, "You just embarrassed the Locke family in public and you're still thinking about the wedding. The most important thing about business-related weddings is profit. As long as the wedding can bring both families enough value and profit, there's nothing that can't be fixed. Besides, you never asked me if I'm willing to marry Thegis either," Jean said with a scoff. Alexander was silenced by Jean's argument. He did not expect her to understand the meaning of the wedding to this extent. "There are a few reasons why I did that to Octavia. First, it's not George's fault and I'm standing up for my son. Second, if I choose to accept her attitude tonight, given Octavia's character, she'll put me in a difficult position when I move in after the wedding. I did what I did because I want the Locke family to know that I'm not someone they can take advantage of." "So, why do you think I did something wrong tonight?" Jean asked as she stared at her father. "Regardless, you shouldn't have embarrassed them in front of the crowd. I didn't start it. She was the one who forced me to do it. Do you think I should just take it silently?" Jean raised a brow and she added, "Or do you think standing up for myself is something wrong? Like what happened 7 years ago?" Alexander bellowed, "Enough. Stop talking about 7 years ago. You deserved it." Jean smirked coldly. "Okay, aside from the Locke family, why did you raise the price during the auction?" Alexander continued to interrogate his daughter. "Are you trying to tell the public that there's dissension in the family? Are you trying to start a fight with your brother-in-law? If I didn't raise the price, do you think the outsiders will think that our family is loving and peaceful? Everyone knew the real situation when Jasmine barged into my relationship and got me thrown out of the manor. Do you think the masses are stupid? We act in front of others and they'll think that our family is loving and peaceful. Jean, besides, I did it because I'm trying to give Eden a chance to show how much he loves Jasmine. I simply raised the price but he still did his best to get the sapphire for Jasmine. People will only regard him as a loving fiancé." Jean suddenly chuckled, though no one expects Fourth Master Swan to interrupt. Fourth Master Swan's interruption amused her a lot. "Sis, what you did tonight affected my relationship with Eden, and yet you're still mocking me." Jasmine grumbled with teary eyes. Jean stared at Jasmine. "Please don't call me sis. I don't want to have nightmares later." Jasmine was shocked by the answer. Jean added, "If a little auction was enough to affect your relationship with Eden, then the vicious vows and oaths that you took in front of the media will come true. Am I right, Jean?" Jasmine shouted. Jennifer pulled her daughter back. "That's enough. Stop it." Jasmine wanted to strangle Jean. Jean's beautiful smile remained on her face. "It's getting late. I'm going to bed. Good night." She held George's hand and went upstairs while the others looked at her. Jasmine was frustrated and embarrassed. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she grumbled, "Dad, Mom, Jean came back to embarrass us all. She's trying to cause trouble, she must be." Alexander was not in a good mood. "Enough. She's valuable to us now, so just let her be for the time being. After the wedding, I'll make her pay for what she did." Jasmine turned to Jennifer. Jennifer showed her a profound gaze and it calmed her down. Jasmine switched back to her obedient and soft side and said with a pampering tone, "Dad, Jean looks nothing like a Lawrence." "She's never a Lawrence," Alexander bellowed. Jasmine was delighted. Now that Jean had returned, Jasmine ought to give her a difficult time. She would never be as merciful as 7 years ago. She swore she would make Jean wish that she was dead. Ellipsis. Jean returned to her room with George. She got George his pajamas and told him to prepare for bed. George took his pajamas and said, "Mom, you did good tonight," Jean praised. George blinked out of confusion. "If you're kind, people will take advantage of you. If you can't tolerate any more, just retaliate." Jean ruffled the boy's curly hair. George smiled with his mother's assuring support. He never liked to smile, but when he did, he became the cutest boy on earth. Jean wanted to kiss the boy's puffy cheeks, but she pinched them instead. It felt as soft as a baby's bottom. She stared into George's big googly eyes and said, "George. We're going to have some rough days ahead of us," Jean said nonchalantly, but the look on her face was serious. George said steadfastly, "I'm not afraid. No one can take advantage of you or bully you, not even my dead father." Jean hugged the boy in her arms. The little boy was the reason that she made it through her toughest times. He was the one who gave her hope in her darkest days. There were only a few important people left in her life: George, Monica, and Kingsley. The others could die 1,000 times and she would not even blink.